the minion in the office.
The minion in the I'm sorry we're starting late this evening, but I would like to begin this business meeting. The first thing I would like to say is that we're going to change how we do some of our business, and we will not ask for public comments on most of the items, and we will ask for public input on some of the approval items, the action items. So that will be a slight change in how we will proceed. First of all, I would like to look at the minutes of November 28th. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Could I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Please?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And next we will approve the minutes from December 5th. Has everyone had a chance to read those? Could I have a motion, please?
I move we accept the minutes from December 5th.
And a second. And Don? Is a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Thank you.
It was not I.
Ed? Thank you. Okay. Now we would like to ask if everyone has had a chance to read the special business meeting minutes of January 4th.
They were too long. I had trouble.
5 hours. Could I have a motion to accept those, please?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All of your minutes passed. Vicki, and I want to thank you very much. I know those were quite marathon for you. Now we'll begin the reports to the board. LCCC reports, SGA. Michael, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. New semester, we kind of reorganized who's on our committees, and we have, let's see, I'm going to space this out, business, agriculture, and computer technology won the food drive that we had at the end of last semester. Other than that, we've replaced our one senator that had resigned, my former vice president, and re-elected a new one. You will see him, his name Gary, at the study sessions, and I will be attending just these business meetings. He'll just be there to take notes and answer any questions that you might have with the scheduling conflict I have with classes this semester. But other than that, things are as usual. Gary Stacks, sorry. Any
Thank you very
questions,
much.
anyone?
Next, we will have Staff Senate, Kevin Yarborough.
Thank you, Chairwoman Merrill. I haven't been here in a couple of months. A lot of changes. But Staff Senate would like to formally congratulate those newly elected members to the board. So welcome aboard. Staff Senate right now, currently, we're kind of observing and trying to inform our constituents on making sure they have a better understanding of what classified and professional means versus also the exempt and non-exempt. This is a lot of stuff that comes down through federal hiring practices and stuff. So we've been working with Peggy over at HR to make sure our folks have a good understanding of that. And also, we're going to meet some with Peggy tomorrow on some of the payroll changes that will be coming down with the automatic timesheets and things like that to make sure the constituents have a good understanding of those changes that are coming on also. Besides that, Staff Senate, we're getting ready to get into our busiest season this spring. We have our ice cream social that'll also include our Staff Senate scholarship fundraiser. That'll be in March. No hard dates yet, but usually we do that during spring break when the students are gone and take, this is more of a employee, faculty, and staff type thing. And then we'll be working with Jeff and Faculty Senate with the faculty staff recognition banquet and dinner in May. No hard dates yet for that either. And then we have our normal staff retreat in May also. And then the employee picnic, that'll be in June. That'll be June 7th. So we do have a hard date for that. And something that'll be a little different this year that we're working on, we've been asked by ACC to see if we couldn't get the picnic over kind of on the mountain and get about halfway between the two campuses and try to get more full participation that way. So we're looking at some options of Heinz Lodge or a Beatavoo area and stuff like that. So more info to come on that. But we'll try to see if we can't get a little better, closer proximity with the ACC folks to participate with the employee picnic. So besides that, that's about all I got unless anybody has any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Next is Faculty Senate, Jeff Schmidl.
All right, thank you, Chair Merrill and Board of Trustees. As Kevin did, I would like to congratulate the new board members we have. Thank you for being willing to serve our institution. I don't have a lot to report. We haven't actually met this semester yet. We have our first Faculty Senate meeting on Friday, so not much to report there. The number one concern I think that we had last semester coming into this semester, there was a lot of talk about faculty pay. That was before Dr. Schaefer had said that he would try to get us a pay raise this year, but so we had decided we would look at that a little closer this semester. So I don't know if we'll do much with that. I would like to get a committee together to look at what other colleges are paying and try to get a grasp on are we in line or not. But we'll find out Friday what the rest of the senators think. Other than that, I guess I would just entertain any questions you might have. The last minutes from the last meeting are on there as well. So,
Questions? Thank you, Jeff.
Kevin, no questions?
Wow.
Saving them for
I'll
later.
have to come better prepared.
I got to see Jeff teaching yesterday. Okay, next report is the LCCC Education Association. Les?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Board of Trustees. We held a meeting of our membership between the last time I was here and today. One of the things we've been talking about and discussing is a possible endowment, a scholarship that the EA might sponsor. And so I'm going to get together with the foundation. We'll start working on that issue. Was grateful to hear the president address pay raises, and so we're excited we may be seeing one this coming year. Had a discussion with him today about that. I know it's not all final yet, but we are looking forward to that. So other than that, that's the two main things that I have to report. It's been pretty quiet other than that. If you have any questions, the legislature's in session, as everybody knows. We're going to be meeting with legislators on Sunday over at the Holiday Inn. Two of us, Kathy Rogers and myself, will be attending with the rest of the Education Association. We're holding a function for them Sunday night right here at the local Holiday Inn. So talking to them about our education issues in the state of Wyoming. So, of course, we'll be bringing forward community college issues. So we're going to be getting together for that whole afternoon to make sure we're on the same page before we meet with them that evening.
Any
If there's
questions?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Les. Next, we have the president's reports, legislative update.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to try to keep this brief and hopefully hear specific questions that you may have. As Les just mentioned, the legislature is in full swing, and there's many things happening. We're tracking a series of proposed legislation, and I know many of the trustees have been involved with the conversations regarding our tracking through the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. The attachment in your agenda lists those that we have been monitoring and looking at most closely. Things are changing so quickly that there's actually, I think, a bill or two that we need to add an update on here. But what I wanted to do is just point out a couple of these for you and in some ways get your reaction and your thoughts, but let you know the direction that we are moving with in regards to some of them. The first one, and I won't cover them all, but if you have questions on the other ones, we can certainly have that conversation. The first one I want to point your attention to is House Bill 105, the Citizens and Students Self-Defense Act. I think many of you have probably heard about this or have been reading about this. This legislation proposed would simply change the statute that requires anybody who has a concealed carry permit to seek approval from the colleges or universities to actually be able to carry on campus, and basically allows, if you have a concealed carry permit in the state of Wyoming, you can bring your guns onto campuses. As you can imagine, I think to a single person, the community college presidents support the right to bear arms. We also have a responsibility to create and maintain a safe educational environment, and we have serious concerns with this because it introduces a series of unknown variables into an environment that we are essentially charged with ensuring is safe. And these variables, we simply won't know that they exist. Right now, we've looked at what it requires in the state of Wyoming to obtain a concealed carry permit. There are many things that process does not consider or cover that give us, a high level of discomfort in knowing that there could be individuals who are carrying a concealed weapon with a concealed weapon permit, but may not be the individuals that we would trust the most in an environment like this. And so our biggest concern is simply that this legislation would not allow us to be aware of some of the most challenging and dangerous variables that are on campus. And whether I've said this, whether the intentions of the person carrying are good or bad, in certain environments, when those weapons come into place, all bets are off, and it gets pretty dangerous. And you don't need to look very far or very long in history Most of you have probably heard about the shooting that happened at a Texas college yesterday. 2 students got in an altercation, both had weapons, they came out, and 3 people, innocent bystanders, ended up getting wounded with it. That's the concern. We don't know how we would manage that environment. And so at this point, we've been pretty clear about wanting to take a strong stance in opposition of this unless you guide me or direct me in another way. I want to continue that, and I would actually encourage you all to reach out to your legislators, to the folks that you know, and express your concerns with what this legislation will mean for a safe environment at LCCC.
Any questions or comments from our board? Frank?
Do you want support information once you finish the entire litany here, or as we go through each one of the bills?
Why don't you let me run through an update?
You want to run through everything?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
we'll go ahead and
Perfect.
have that. House Bill 163 is interesting. It's in the early stages. It essentially would provide an incentive, a loan repayment program for teachers, predominantly K-12 teachers, that need to seek graduate level coursework to be qualified to teach college level courses in the concurrent enrollment method. And so this would actually provide some resources to those individuals to seek professional development opportunities and gain their coursework and their credits in the discipline at the graduate level and be qualified to teach concurrent enrollment for us. And it is something that we recognize as a need even here in Cheyenne with some of the teachers that would like to teach concurrent enrollment but do not have a master's degree or the number of credits in the discipline at the graduate level. This legislation would actually put $100,000 in a grant program that is being proposed to be run out of the commission to help make those opportunities more affordable for folks. House Bill 165 is one I think many of you are aware of, and we are tracking and very interested in it. We have not had an opportunity to hear the presentation of it by its sponsor or engage in the conversation. But what this bill would essentially do is for any Wyoming high school graduate that comes to a community college or the university and needs a remedial course, those would have to be tuition and fee free. So if a high school graduate comes to LCCC, if this legislation passes, if we enrolled them in remedial education or remedial coursework, we could not charge tuition or fees for those courses. We've speculated up and down about the motivation behind this, and I'm not sure that I understand completely. We have heard that it may be some concern that the community colleges are all over the board in regards to their placement, their cut scores. And so it's not clear to high schools what it means to be college ready, and therefore we should not be able to hold these high school students responsible for the cost of remediation. And there's a litany of other speculation about the driver behind this legislation. Naturally, many people think, well, the first thing we do is oppose it. You know, if we can't charge tuition for remedial coursework, going to be a significant financial hit against the colleges. The commission generated a fiscal note on this legislation that estimated the loss of revenue and tuition and fees for the colleges would be about $1.3 million. The colleges are updating that or reviewing that. I think Casper did their analysis, and they estimated for Casper alone it would be over $500,000. So we're going to look at what the true picture would be for the cost or the hit to us. There's some other holes within the legislation. It doesn't give any type of leeway for somebody who graduated from Central High in 1965 and is coming back to the college. And with this legislation as it reads, if they come to LCCC even after graduating back in 65, they placed in developmental math, we could not charge tuition for that. So as I was saying, the first response is, well, we're just going to oppose this. This is crazy. We can't charge. This is what we do. There's a handful of us that are encouraging the others to step back and think about this a little bit more. Perhaps this type of legislation is exactly the game changer to force us to rethink our business model and our model for developmental education. It's no secret that developmental education doesn't work. I shared with Trustee Mosier earlier today the numbers I'm using, just looking at Wyoming numbers. Of every 100 students that place in developmental coursework with LCCC, we'll get 31 of them through to a college level course in 2 years. Only 31 will actually complete a college level course in 2 years. You know, and so the argument is, could you mainstream those students into college level coursework, provide strong academic supports, tutoring, supplemental instruction, And could we get 31 of those 100 through a college-level course in 2 years just by enrolling them in college-level courses? I bet you we probably could. So it may be that this legislation should be supported, and we should encourage it as a way to face one of the largest challenges that we've had in higher education. Now, it's easy to say that there are a whole lot of details that go along with that. When does it phase in? How do we do this? Can we really make that shift? Is that the smartest shift? You know, are there still values in developmental education? You bet. But it's something that's forcing a conversation. The bigger piece, and I think what I want to make you aware of as trustees with this legislation, is something that we need to be more engaged as 7 colleges and certainly as 7 boards of trustees. We are reacting to legislation about the curriculum and the coursework that we offer. We should be driving and informing legislation on what we need to be doing here. And that's a concern. The fact that we are now seeing what's been happening in states like California and Oregon and the Midwest, where legislation is starting to drive what's happening in the curriculum. And I don't know if that's a path we want to continue to go down. So I'll offer that up. I'll keep you posted on how that conversation ensues. It may be that the sponsor simply put it out there as a way to shock and awe us into a discussion about developmental education. We will see as it proceeds. Some legislation, House Bill 166 and 177 deal with the Hathaway curriculum. One increases the amount of money available for the scholarship. House Bill 177 is interesting. We're looking at that. It actually expands the curriculum to include the foreign language, fine and performing arts, and career and vocational education, which would actually open up some greater opportunities for students to come to the community college, seek an applied program, and have Hathaway scholarship with that. Let me see if there was other ones. Senate File 77, which advanced out of Senate appropriations today, essentially removes the construction management elements of capital construction and major maintenance at the community colleges out of the commission and moves it to the construction management division under A&I. We've been looking at that, and it's a pretty benign bill, we believe, because it just shifts how we manage the reimbursement and some of the architectural selection of our construction projects. The commission has said it really doesn't matter to them. Construction management and A&I has said, sure, we'll take it. The colleges, we're not seeing it as any great issue. I think the biggest thing to watch here is the details that ensue as a result. This could add another administrative bureaucratic step and layer in the process for capital construction. If we truly just shift what the commission is doing to the construction management division, I don't know that we'll see much of an impact. But that does have some legs behind it. Let's see, Senate File 121, Career and Technical Training Grants. I testified on this morning. My understanding, this is the 3rd time that this old friend has been up and moving through the legislative process. There seems to be broad support of it. But essentially what it would do is provide a grant program predominantly targeted at adults to come back and enroll in and complete an applied program, a career and tech ed program that is identified with a field that the Department of Workforce Services identified as high wage, high growth in Wyoming. They have 2 years they can go through the program. The catch here is that they actually have to commit to and work in Wyoming in that area for 2 years, and then the grant is essentially dismissed at that point of the scholarship. As I said, it's got great support. I actually think it's a good bit of legislation, and it's really targeted for community colleges, which is nice. It has about a $500,000 appropriation associated with it. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot. I think you all know that the governor denied our request for enrollment growth. That enrollment growth is a function of the funding model in statute. It's something that we are encouraged to do as part of the funding model. The governor denied it. An amendment was rejected at the Joint Appropriations Committee for it. And I don't think we will see a whole lot of conversation or movement on requests for enrollment growth for the remainder of the session. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts and answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just go down the list quickly and just give you my thoughts. First of all, the Citizens and Students Self-Defense Act. I can't say that I have a feel one way or the other, but I think worrying about the fact that it creates new uncertainties on campus that you didn't have before is not so. You have no idea what's going on in lots of places. It just suggests another area in which you probably have very little control. And as you know, you look at how other people have been wiped out on campuses. Look at Casper, done with bow and arrow, I think, and I don't know, maybe knives and things like that. So a lot can be done beyond pistols. And so I don't know that I have much to say about that. And I wonder if the bill passes and you begin denying people the ability to do that, or you're just heading for a court with people and creating hassles there. I don't know. But let's talk about some of the others that I think are interesting. The remedial classes, tuition free, frankly, I like that idea. And here's why. Let me just tell you why. If I look at the 4 credit side of the campus here, there are a lot of programs that generate money beyond what it costs to run those programs. One of the areas that generates money beyond what it costs is English, and a lot of our remedial students are in English. And where does that money go? Well, that money ends up subsidizing programs that cost more than revenues they generate. And I've sort of found that offensive, in that the remedial students are then, or the state, or some other entity, however it's financed, those programs end up subsidizing other programs. I just make a statement that I think is absolutely true. If we would focus better on getting the remedial students to operate at the college level, we would do more good for the workforce of Southeast Wyoming, to have a larger, well-educated, well-trained workforce than anything else we do on the campus, and I firmly believe that. Get them operating at college level, because if you look at what employers want, they want employees who can read instructions, follow instructions, write clearly, communicate orally clearly, and do at least, I think, probably college level algebra for some of their jobs. Golly, you know, the people who are remedial coming here don't fit any of those criteria at all. And that's, if we're only getting 31% of, say, 700 of these students through in 2 years, let's double that, and it becomes, what, another 420 or something like that students entering the workforce well prepared for jobs. And we don't have any good way to measure what that impact is, but it's got to be huge. It really does. So, yeah, kick us around a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's a great deal of money. They're talking, what, 1.4 million? Is that what you said?
That's the commission's fiscal note.
All right, give us an incentive to do a better job, and I like that. We don't know. We don't know what good that money does at the present time. We don't have any measures of that, really. All right, everybody's looking at me suspiciously.
May I add a couple of comments?
Yes.
I too have comments on the 2 bills that Trustee Kilty brought up. The guns situation, I agree with you 100%, Dr. Joe. They need to look a little bit more into the ramifications of such a legal change in the university, in the schools, and the community colleges. So I would support your position that you indicated earlier. I don't think I totally support Dr. Kilty's comments about we should take the hit for remedial education problems. Seems to me it's like an unfunded mandate. You're coming up with, okay, we got a problem in the state, it hasn't been handled very well, and we're going to knock one of the providers with an additional cost. Now, if they want the students to be tuition free, well then I think there needs to be a stream of funds to cover that. So I would not be in favor of that particular bill the way it is currently written, as I understand it, because they're going to just push that cost onto the community colleges. I understand that Dr. Kilty thinks that would be good for us to get kind of kicked in the rear end and maybe do something better in remedial education. But your comments, was it at our retreat, where you said that we're looking at the BOSHIs, where we can work with the high schools and address this remedial education problem maybe in a more effective way. I just think that you also commented that there's a need for more understanding of the ramifications of this particular bill if it's passed. So I would be reluctant to support the community colleges moving forward with accepting House Bill 165 as it is right now.
Ed, or Trustee Moser.
I'll refer to these in the same order they've been spoken to already in terms of the gun bill. I would like to see some more information provided on that. Again, we can always throw out Amendment 2 and talk about those kinds of issues, but I really feel strongly about trying to provide a reasonably safe environment. Who knows what that word reasonably means, but it's a tremendous challenge. And I think we need to better understand how that would help if we were to prohibit or find some way to reduce the possibility of those arguments that might occur. You know, in the old days, we might say that I think there was a lot of wisdom at the time in terms of saying if we go back and think of Wyoming and the Old West, you know, if you kept the guns out of the bars, you might have less shooting going on. You know, people would get into a fist fight, but they wouldn't draw the guns, which have much more dire consequences. I even kind of wonder about the incident that occurred at UW here just a few days ago in the athletic area in terms of the fight that occurred there. What if there had been guns available? We saw some action that was taken by a particular individual, at least alluded to have taken place, that, you know, would that person maybe have used a gun? And I don't want to speak to specific individuals, but you create environments like that and you enhance the opportunity for some challenges for our students. And I think we need to look at, you know, maybe we preserve those rights, but how can we enhance the environment to where those rights are not going to be treaded on? Are there some ways that we can maybe control a little bit what's going on out there in terms of availability of weapons? But yeah, I think there needs to be a closer look at this because we all know what's going on. There's a lack of civility and so forth out there, and it's just creating some challenges that concern me a great deal. I'm not wanting to take away anyone's rights, but at the same time, I think we have a duty to look closely at that. Secondly, in terms of the remedial, yeah, wake-up call, whatever you want to look at, but I think we need some time. I don't know, and I'm not aware that this bill has any date on it. So without a date, I think it's imperative that we try and look at some reasonable time frame where we can analyze how we can mitigate this change, not only in terms of the impact financially, but be able to have time to put a plan in place. We're already talking about co-requisites and additional support in classes and things like that, but those are in the preliminary stages. I would hope that we can get those folks to realize that we need a little bit of time to make an adjustment to this. If they're going to pass this, then give us time. Give us time to also work with students so that students know they're coming into an environment where that's not something we're going to provide to them. And by that I'm saying, as we were down in financial aid and student services tonight, I think those students over time have become aware that certain services are available. And now we're going to take them away. How quickly do you do that? Because they too need to have a time, I think, to adjust, just as we do. So I would simply ask that we push for some time and look at how we might gain from this process, but do it in a fashion which does not harm.
Madam Chair.
Well put. Trustee Kelty.
Well, I was just going to go on down a couple of these others. A question. It said under Senate File 121, it says grants would be paid directly to the training providers. Who are the training providers?
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, the community colleges.
Okay.
In fact, some of the conversation today, the YO Tech and some of the other private providers would like to see their name in there. At this point, the legislation only identifies community colleges.
Senate File 128, we sort of do this already, and all it says is authorize. But we effectively do it already.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, yes, to a point. There are certain components that were required to actually focus clearly on low bid, and I believe in some of the community colleges they've struggled with limited bidders and certain ones low bidding without the ability to truly look at qualifications. Our procurement process, for the most part, does look at things other than just price. But I think when we get to capital construction and some of the larger scale construction, we have to weigh price more heavily.
Just one final remark, going back to the remedial classes tuition free. If that bill passes, that might provide some rationale for convincing the county commissioners that we need the mill levy for BOCES. Provided excellent rationale right there. So.
Yeah, good point, Madam Chair. Trustee Kilty, I think that will. And in fact, yesterday in a meeting in Casper with the presidents and some trustees and commission staff, Dr. Rose asked specifically, when is LCCC in Laramie County going to have a BOCES or a BOCES as a result of this conversation. But I agree. I mean, this legislation is pushing an agenda, and that's the intent behind it, is to say we know this isn't working, nothing's changing. We're going to start to push that agenda. To Trustee Mosier's question, those are the things we've been talking about. This may make us change our business model and the way we do this, and that may be good. It can't happen overnight. Let's talk about phased-in implementation and taking a look at some of the broader pictures of it. The concern about an unfunded mandate, to your point, Trustee Erickson, has been brought up and a concern. There have been talks about other legislations and potential amendments that would fund this through revenues from the school district foundation fund, the fund that brings money to K-12. They've talked about doing a reverse tax back to the counties that these students come from. So there's a lot of conversation about, if we do this, how do we fund that? I strongly believe that the intent of this legislation, though, is not to let's fund it another way. It's let's get rid of it completely or fix it or do something about it. But as I say, it hasn't gone very far in the process, and it may be just legislation that will allow a conversation to ensue. And again, I'll take your direction on it. We'll continue to study it. But in many ways, this may be the type of policy lever that truly pushes us to reform something we know really isn't working. So,
Brenda.
Madam Chairwoman, Joe, did you say there was a appropriation with 165?
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, no, there is no
okay.
appropriation with that. There is an appropriation with Senate File 121, the Career and Technical Training Grants.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Erickson.
Trustee Little, remember the orientation that you gave Trustee Lummis and I? You said if we don't understand something, to ask a question no matter what it might be, as simple as it may seem. Well, I've got one of those, I think, simple questions on the budget item, enrollment growth funding. Could someone define that, Dr. Joe? What is that?
Oh, wow. Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, real briefly, and we can go into greater detail at other times. The funding model or the funding system for the community colleges has a couple of components. One is what they look at in terms of base funding, and they did a study and set the base of expenditures from the 2004 year, where they said, okay, your base will be set on your 2004 expenditures and things like that, and then we have some escalators built into the funding model. There is another piece that's associated with that funding model as a result of the change, and that's what they call enrollment growth. And it was intended to incentivize colleges and reward them for increased enrollment, and also take money away from colleges that had decreased enrollment. And so what they do is they look at the change in growth based on FTE from 2004, and this is a mechanism for us to seek in supplemental or exception budget requests additional funding for enrollment. So essentially, it's another mechanism associated with community college funding that is intended to give us an opportunity to come with exception budget requests for enrollment growth. The problem is it's incredibly confusing to everybody. Most people don't understand that it's enrollment growth since 2004. I've heard that question, well, some of the community colleges have enrollment decreases. Why are you requesting enrollment growth? They don't understand that and see this as a mechanism of the funding model. What they see it as, the community colleges coming and asking for more money over and over and over again. And so there's been a lot of concern about the enrollment growth mechanism. The commission's standpoint has been, this is what it says in statute we're supposed to do and bring these forward when we have enrollment growth. And people just don't understand it. And so I think it's something within the funding model we need to take a look at and possibly change, because every session, two that I've been here now, and I'll bet you for many, many in the past, it is an uphill battle trying to, one, educate our legislature what is enrollment growth, and two, convincing them that we actually need it or deserve it. So, in a nutshell, and we can go into more detail off the mic.
Madam Chair, it appears to me it's if I'm hearing you correctly, it's a rob Peter, pay Paul. If it's really that bad, where if you have a loss of FTEs in some colleges, they would get less money. And so this $854,000 that was proposed, is that taking away from some other college in order for LCCC, for example, to receive an increase because we have an enrollment growth?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, not with the enrollment growth funding. These would be new dollars that would be appropriated and then split up. In this $854,000, the appropriation, I think there were 3 colleges. LCCC was one that would have received enrollment growth. The other ones would not have. Well, actually 4. I think Casper would have got $3,000 or something like that. But the funding model does exactly what you're talking about. It has, it has variable and fixed components to it. And in some years, based on enrollment fluctuation, you divvy the pie up differently, and you have winners and losers. Some campuses receive more money, and other campuses receive less money unless there's continual new funds brought in by the legislature.
Trustee Mosier.
2 other bills I wanted to just ask a couple of questions for clarification on. On SF77, which is the construction management one. Typically, when we've gotten into a major construction project, we hire I believe they refer to him as a construction manager. And what I'm wondering is there any reduction, or would we not need to have that position if this were to pass?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I might look to Vice President Hoagland. I am not aware, because I've not gone through a capital construction project, whether we hire a project manager. As she's wheeling her way to the podium there, though, I will say that there was conversation today in the Senate Appropriations Committee discussing about the shifting of resources. This legislation would shift, I think it says, 1 position from the Community College Commission to construction management. And the question came up today, aren't there some expenses that happen at the community colleges or resources where they're managing some parts of these construction projects that could feasibly also shift to the construction management division if we're moving this process over? I haven't been able to dig into that, but it could be that there's something associated with that. So, Carol, do you know? Can you answer Trustee Mosier's question?
We do not hire an outside person to come in to manage our construction projects. Right now, that's being handled by the Director of Physical Plant and the Director of Procurement, and they do, Jerry handles the pre-construction phase, and Tim handles the post, or during the construction phase. We do hire an architect, and they come in and they help also facilitate that as well. But we have not hired anyone specifically to just be a project manager.
Well, maybe I'm remembering back too far, but I thought when we built the new dorms that we did in fact have a person whose job was to maintain, work with the general contractor on that, and there was a percentage that was paid to that person. So if we're not doing it, we didn't do it last time, then no, it doesn't need to go any further.
Now, we do pay an architect a percentage, but as far as I know, and I can't speak to prior than 3 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any other questions of Carol while she's there?
I might
Trustee Mosher, did you have something else?
My other question dealt with a different bill, HB, House Bill 54, which is on GED. And this is probably a pretty quick scenario there, but I'm wondering, does that impact, or how does that impact us and the people we have that are working with helping folks get to that GED?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosher, House Bill 52 simply is responding to the pending, or I guess already done, privatization of the GED. GED is now actually a trademark term, and with the acquisition of GED by Thompson, Prometric, Pearson, Thompson, they're all a conglomerate. There is concern that with the privatization, the cost of the examination and the utilization of GED and GED materials is going to escalate significantly. As a response, what this legislation does is create the opportunity for Wyoming to establish its own high school equivalency certificate and testing process. The impact to us would be we would have hopefully a more affordable option when we're working with students and ultimately helping them test to achieve their high school equivalency. And that's the intent of this legislation. In general, we support it. In fact, we fully support it because it protects us from any escalation of the privatization of GED.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I guess what I would like to ask Joe, our president, is what kind of guidance, or it sounds like people have different questions and got different answers and have different opinions, so what kind of guidance would you like from us?
Madam Chair, I appreciate the question. Certainly some level of consensus, on some of the legislation I think will be helpful. In many of these cases, we're early enough in the legislative process that we'll sort of watch and monitor and get to the point where we know whether we really have to rally the troops and make a statement and make a push. The one thing I would encourage, I know Trustee Mosher has been participating, 3 o'clock every Friday there's a Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees legislative update. It's a call-in, it's a phone call, it's very simple and incredibly informative. At those meetings, trustees, and we're a member of the association, give guidance to Steve Bamer, our executive director and lobbyist, on what direction to take on this legislation. The presidents call in there, but it's really the trustees that are making that that direction. I would encourage you to participate in those. At this point, I think I've heard individual comments from the board, so I can sort of walk that fine line, especially like with the House Bill 165. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm good at this point. Certainly in the future, I'm going to want more direction, or we'll have to decide, or you'll have to decide as a board what stance you take.
Okay. Is that okay with the board?
Madam
Trustee Mosher?
I kind of wonder how that system functions, because timing is everything, mm-hmm. as Joe knows from the early morning session. But when those calls come on Friday, if some of you have some perspectives on these bills, really, of course, talk to Joe, but if you want, get a hold of Brenda or I and kind of give us some input so that as we're on there, we can share that. There's nothing wrong with any of you folks also being on the call if you wish. If it came to, and we typically don't do a vote, but it would be because you had selected Brenda and I to be on the WAC, we would be voting, but typically we don't vote on those Friday calls. That would be a special type thing if we were doing any voting, excuse me. But would simply ask that you share your perspectives with Joe and us so that we can kind of use those to guide us as we comment to the trustees and to Steve.
Thank you. I really like that, and I know that I spoke to you this last week, or you spoke to me about these items, at least a few of them, so I appreciate you and Brenda doing that, and you too, Joe. Thank you.
Madam Chair, as a new trustee, the material that comes from the association, it's Steve Bamer. Bamer?
Yes.
It's excellent. He does a very good job of summarizing, and I think it's essential for we to at least read that on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Good comment. Are we done with this one? Okay, let's move on to reorganization update. Joe.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I won't go through this. You'll see there's a memo that I sent to campus on the 17th, along with accompanying update of the reorganization. I believe you were copied on that email. Both of those are in your board materials. I simply wanted to keep you apprised of the process and the progress we're making on campus reorganization. I will point out one thing. Originally, when I had the conversation with campus and we started looking at a comprehensive reorganization, I projected and sort of promised a three-phased reorganization. We've accomplished phase 1 and 2, even though we're still working on the implementation of these. The third phase was really intended to identify some of the things that would help advance LCCC in the future. I think it's very timely with our work this spring coming on the strategic planning process that the need for that third phase of reorganization really isn't there. I think the strategic plan will actually help chart that path into the future. So I just wanted to point that out, but be happy to answer any questions that the trustees may have regarding the reorganization.
Any questions, trustees?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Trustee Erickson.
There's still some, as you have said in the past, some discussions going on about merging a couple of, and I'm not into the terminology correctly here. So, but I'm not sure which ones they are, so I'm not going to try and say for sure. But as I understood, there was at your kickoff with the faculty, we indicated that there's going to be some continuing discussion about one of the elements of the reorganization. How is that coming along?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, it's interesting you brought that up because after I said that and presented that at the start of the semester, I received numerous emails from folks saying, just decide. It's time for us to move on with that. And so as a result of that, I did share this with College Council, received their recommendation, and have decided that we did go ahead and we're merging those two divisions. The Division of Career and Technical Education with the Business, Ag, and Technology Division will become the School of Business, Agriculture, and Technical Studies. And so that decision has been made, and we're moving forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Trustee Mosier.
I guess there was one, and I would simply ask this. I spoke with Dr. Schaefer earlier about this, but I would just like to hear that again. I'd ask with regards to descriptions for coordinators, managers, directors, faculty chair or department head, and I wondered what kind of description we would have of those, and would you share that response again with me?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair. Trustee Mosier. With this reorganization, one of the things that you'll see in my footnote, and I know folks around campus have heard me talk about this, we need to establish a more formalized mechanism for identifying and directing faculty leadership. Across our academic areas, we use different terminology, different definitions, and different arrangements for putting faculty in leadership roles, whether it's the coordination of the curriculum, the direction of a program, working with a specific population or the schools. We have lead faculty, discipline coordinators, program directors. One of the things we need to do as a result of this reorganization, and just good business practice, is to establish some commonality across what we mean by faculty leadership. If they are department chairs, let's call them department chairs. If they are program directors, I've been clear, I believe I've been clear to the campus, that is not my place or really an executive function for us to come in and say these are what they are and how they're going to work. It's something that I'll be asking the academic affairs vice presidents. Dr. Pat may sneak away before we get to this, but certainly Dr. Fierro, when he starts with us, the deans and the faculty, to come to some consensus on what we mean and what we are looking for in faculty leadership. Define them, establish a job description or some type of description of what these positions are, and then let's look at some uniformity or at least a system at which we can look at compensation, release time, and the management of the duties that they will be assigned with. But that's a decision and the work that I'll be asking the academic folks to tackle and to do. I think they are the ones that need to determine the structure of their departments, and then ultimately what the role of the faculty leadership may be. I can tell you, as I shared with Trustee Mosier this morning, it comes up in almost every conversation we have about managing change and managing some of the things we need to be doing in the academic side of the college. There is a need for faculty leadership, and somebody has to do that, and whatever we call them or whatever we do, we need to recognize that need's there, and the faculty are best positioned to handle those needs. We just need to define the structure of how we're going to do that.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. I like it, and I think people on campus are liking the way we're moving at this time. Next, we'll have board reports. I'm first on the list, and I know that we have one standing committee, and I've talked to Dr. Schaefer, and I think that we need one more committee, and that would be the Strategic Planning Committee. And I think I'll be on that committee, but I'd like 2 other people to be on it as well. So if you don't have to decide tonight, but if you would consider being on that committee. Okay, give me a call if you want to be on it.
Madam Chairwoman, can you give me your vision of what the Strategic Planning Committee members would be working on and doing?
I think we'll work with Dr. Schaefer, and I think there will be other people from the campus working on it, and so it would be a larger committee. How many people do you think would be on that, Joe?
Madam Chair, at this point, I'm not sure, but what I envision is that we will have a group comprised of members of College Council and the trustees that will essentially be the core group associated with facilitating and moving through the strategic planning process. So the Strategic Planning Committee of the board is really the committee that would be engaged in that process, be the conduit to inform the other trustees and the full board on where we're going and what we're doing. But it's really identifying you folks that would be willing to roll up your sleeves and get more into the nitty-gritty of the process with the college.
Madam Chair,
Mosier?
I'm wondering at this point, are we retaining the Finance and Facilities Committee? Are we retaining the current committee structures that we have?
That is the one committee that I think we will retain, and if you would like to remain on it, you and Dr. Kilty, I would appreciate it, but if you would like to shift or add a committee, that would be great.
I would like to stay on that, but I would also like to be possibly look at, if possible, the Strategic Planning Committee also.
I would welcome you there.
I would like to be on that committee.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. When I'm on committees, it is where I meet the people that work here, and that has been the biggest joy for me, is to really find out what is happening at this college at that level. So I appreciate it, and I'm glad people are willing to be on these committees. The next question I have is, do we need any other committees that you can think of? And what we can do is add ad hoc committees, or Joe has asked several of us to be on special committees in the college, and I have appreciated that and enjoyed that myself. So as time goes on, he will continue to do that, I believe. Thank you, Joe. Board committee reports. First of all, we would have Dr. Kilty and Ed Mosier.
In view of the fact that we haven't recently had a committee meeting and that we don't have a full set of reports, I think let's just shorten up the meeting and we'll have a report next month.
Perfect. Thank you. Then Ed, under other board updates, he would like to speak to special board training opportunities.
We received from ACCT some information regarding a meeting that will occur March 21st through 23rd. And at that meeting, what got my attention was that there are some seminars there that would relate to such things as outcomes-focused student success, innovative programs, in addition to that, these are things that I think we're looking at, and I know other trustees have asked me about this, and that is fiduciary responsibility. And that's something that will go on there, along with presidential assessment. And one that I think we need to look at very closely and keep in mind is succession planning. So that professional meeting is March 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And the information is available that was sent out to you. So I just want to emphasize, I think for those folks who might look at going to that, there's some good opportunities there if you're interested in pursuing that. And I think Dr. Schaefer had some comments about it on another meeting. I'm not sure you want to speak to that at this point or later on. The ACC.
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair, members of the board. First, you know, I would agree. We went, a few of us went to New York last year, and I don't know that we came back with the type of information and results we anticipated having. I don't say that to discourage us from going to this. In fact, as Trustee Mosier pointed out to me this morning, I went through and looked at the lineup of sessions and some of the folks that will be there. This could be a very informative opportunity, and if you as trustees wanted to put a delegation together to go, I would also schedule it and go along with you as part of this one. So certainly would support that if there are folks interested in going to San Antonio. No Broadway there, but that's okay. The other one, the option is the American Association of Community Colleges has their annual convention in April every year. This year it's in San Francisco, I think the third week of April. I do plan on putting together a team from LCCC to attend. I find that this event is informative. It has good sessions, and the last few have been very evidence-based about student success and completion. But more importantly, it's a wonderful environment for people to really get indoctrinated to the community college mission and re-energized in many ways. And so we use it as I see it, have used it as a very successful professional development opportunity for people who are new to the community college world, or what I see as up-and-comers. I think it might be an excellent opportunity for trustees to also get indoctrinated if they wanted to, but be exposed to that national conversation and dialogue about community colleges. It's really a neat event, and so I'd be happy to have Vicki send you information about AACC if you might be interested in attending that in San Francisco at the end of April.
Thank you. And something I read on there, Ed, is that they wanted, if we attend that conference, they would like us to bring a team, the president as well as 3 or 4 trustees.
Yes.
Okay. I guess we'll each have to decide individually if we want to go and if it's worthwhile for our board and our college. Any other comment?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Don.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Have you in the past, as a board, laid out a schedule of the various types of valuable conferences or workshops for the board members over, say, a 12-month period, so we could kind of look at what's available and where we should be participating?
Not to my knowledge. Yes. Thank you, Vicki. Okay. And the answer to that is yes.
Okay, the answer is yes and no. We have a listing of a number of different types of meetings, but we haven't had a discussion amongst ourselves as to how we want to utilize those for the best interest of LCCC. Rather than, okay, are we interested to go to this one? Oh, I like to go to New York, or I like to go to San Francisco. I think we need to kind of identify what's going to be in the best interest for us and also for LCCC as a whole. I guess I'm talking as a former mayor in this regard, because when we dealt with our continuing education and our conference participation, we looked at the year in advance, and we had a budget for it. Now, I assume that the board has a budget for these conferences, and I suspect that's in the other expenses, quote unquote.
No, there's actually set out travel in-state and out-of-state. There is a budget for that, yes. Part of the issue you're speaking to, I think, is very appropriate in terms of looking at in total. One of the challenges we face from time to time, though, is how futuristic they are in providing us the actual agenda. Sometimes both, well, I cannot speak for ACC, but ACCT is a little remiss, I think, in getting us agenda information. We know the conference, but we don't know what the agenda looks like, and that's why I've been, typically looking personally at these and saying, that's not what benefits the college. We're not working on those kinds of things, but I think that is a very valid point. I'd be happy to work with you if you want to kind of help me a little bit. We could take a look at the best information we have.
I think that's a fine idea. Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, would it be
Trustee
appropriate
Ledger?
for me to make a pitch again? I think we've got 6 people who are attending the state WACCT. And if you can, I would also ask if you can come for the commission meeting that day. That's really helpful to better understand and meet some of your fellow trustees from other colleges who will attend those the commission meeting. And in addition, of course, we've got the WACCT conference that goes along with that with some workshops.
And what day and what time is the commission meeting? Is that the one on the 7th or on the 6th?
The 6th, I believe.
The 6th, okay.
Is it 6th?
Thank you.
Would you please expand, Madam Chairman, good. Mr. Mosier, Trustee Mosier, tell about this luncheon on Wednesday. That's the first I had heard about it, and all of a sudden it said I was coming. Well, I don't, will you tell what the luncheon is? I know there's a dinner at 6 o'clock with the commission, isn't that right?
Yes.
And then what's the luncheon?
For those, typically when you attend the commission meeting, we're out of town a lot of times, but at the commission meeting, the trustees who are attending the meeting along with the commission and the commission staff usually have lunch together. And did I leave out anybody?
Just us wee little presidents, but yeah.
I'm sorry. That would be the case, and you wouldn't have encountered that unless you were out of town at one of those meetings, or in the past that probably was done here too, but I'm not sure if it was an informed situation.
Well, I just wondered if it was really that imperative, if you're not attending the meetings that day, to be at the luncheon. Would it be just as well to just wait and come in the evening?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Du Bois, if you're not going to attend the meeting, there's no reason. You're certainly welcome to come for lunch if that's what you want to do, but it's really intended as an opportunity during the commission meeting for the commissioners, the trustees, and the presidents to interact over lunchtime.
Thank you. I'll inform the secretary that I will not be coming. I will be there that evening and then all day Thursday, right?
I believe so, if you would.
All day Thursday, the 7th. Well, we have meetings.
Yes.
That's the WACT.
Madam Chairwoman, I want to add something though, Bill. Wait just a second. In the past, there was a situation where WCC, the thing that's happening Wednesday, the Community College Commission, met here at LCCC, and there was only one trustee who joined them for lunch. And that was very negatively received. Why is there only one trustee having lunch with the commission when we're right in your own backyard? So I personally think it's important that we do go to that lunch on the 6th, even if we don't go to the rest of the meetings. That's my take on it.
Aye, I'll be there for lunch, as well as the other meetings. I'm not sure, excuse me, Madam Chair, I'm not sure whether Betsy asked us about the lunch. I'm sure since Bill
She
said
did.
She did.
must have. Okay.
She did.
Okay, 'cause somehow I missed it.
And Madam Chairwoman, what's going on the night of the 6th? I wasn't aware something was going on the night of the 6th.
No, it's the
We have
7th,
our
I
meeting.
think, is the,
The-
We
Oh, our
yeah, we
meeting
have
we
here.
have our
meeting.
meeting, a dinner, at 6 with
Right.
them, and then our meeting that night,
That's correct.
Okay,
regular meeting.
okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and that would be, that is designed specifically for that evening meal before our board meeting in this particular case. That is designed to interact with the commissioners.
Madam Chair, then maybe that's the meeting that was scarcely attended previously.
No. that
It
we
was
were
the
all-
lunch.
We were all.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, at that point in time, the lunch was designed just for the commissioners and the trustees. And it was held
Oh,
for the last 2 years,
oh,
Commissioner Atwell has asked that we move that to the evening.
oh.
I thought maybe there would be an extended time for conversation, which also means that you may want to move the start of the study session.
Okay, or we could maybe start our dinner session at 5:30 and start our meeting at 7. Would that be enough time?
That would be up to you. That was
What do you think?
I believe so.
Why don't we do that? And my other question is, if we can't make the luncheon that day, would it be okay to just come to the meetings and not come to the luncheon? Because we would have a chance to then have a relationship with the other folks. Okay, sounds good.
Madam Chair, Trustee Du Bois, never mind. Things changed.
I like a lively discussion.
For Madam Chair, not
Trustee
to
Mosher.
muddy the water, but I would simply lay out the groundwork that this is a good time for new trustees to visit with commission staff. Even though they're here in our community, this is an opportune time to visit with the folks on the staff at the commission, along with the commissioners.
Trustee Mosher, will all those commission folks be here? Because it sounds like there are quite a few of them, like 28 or something, right? Is that how many there are
No.
employees?
No,
How many are there? Oh, just the staff, okay.
We're not talking staff.
We're not talking staff, we're talking about Jim Rose and the commissioner. We're talking,
Staff.
okay,
We're talking about the commission.
the commission. Thank you.
7.
7, okay, got it.
7
Thank you.
commissioners, and then there are not that many staff people, but there's maybe 10?
More than that, maybe 14.
Yeah.
Okay. But they do not all come, but there's
This is
probably
generating
6 or
more
7.
discussion than our finance and budget.
Okay, let's call this to an end. Thank you very much. We will move on to approval items. The first approval item will be presented by Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The first item on your agenda that we're here asking your approval for is the approval to acquire and implement a digital signage system here at LCCC. We had a considerable conversation about this at your study session. I just want to point out one change. Based on Trustee Mosher's comments, we did inquire about the expense and the option of adding a kiosk unit, an interactive kiosk unit. They bid that to us, and if I remember correctly, it added about $4,000 worth of expenditures. We did include that in here. We think it's something that has merit. In fact, right now we're sort of arm wrestling over where that kiosk may be located and what type of information will be on it. But that is the one change with the system as it's proposed. This does now include a kiosk system as one of the 8 digital signage elements that we'll implement. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to move that we approve this item.
I'll second that.
I guess we're, okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? It is unanimous. Good work. I guess that a retreat was worth something.
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to strategically elongate the conversations during the board reports to move through the action items.
Next is a presentation by Dr. Schaefer, approval of career and technical education building expansion.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, we had considerable conversation, I believe, at your study session regarding our plans for the expansion of the career and technical education facility. As you know, we were working on a proposal and an estimate to look at adding 2,000 square feet to that existing building with the intent of accommodating additional career and technical education programs. The first and probably foremost that you'll be seeing is the addition or the reinstatement of our welding program. The one that will be shortly on its heels that you will be seeing and hearing about is a program dealing with process technology. I have heard some comments from folks, both I think amongst your ranks and elsewhere, you know, that we putting the cart before the horse. You want to build facilities before we've had a conversation about curriculum, and it is a little bit awkward. You could say the other thing: do you develop a program when you don't have a plan for the space? What we're trying to do with both of these is get the processes for curriculum and expansion as closely together as we can. And so I thought what I would do is sort of lay out our plans, and then we can have conversation about the specific item for the expansion of the facility and also talk about the plans for curriculum approval. This expansion, because of the expense, will require Wyoming Community College Commission approval. They are also an element in the approval of the program. And in trying to meet the expectations of the local workforce in regards to when we need to have the program up and running, and then manage a construction timeline, we're trying to stay ahead of that curve. If we start on the timeline and enter into the design elements and the design phases here in February, our best estimate is we could have the construction project done August, September-ish. To actually get that done. So what we've proposed to the commission, and I would like to propose to you, is that we are asking for approval to move forward with the construction process, the construction project, but have that approval contingent, if it's your interest, on the approval of the curriculum. So you know, our plans are to ask the commission to approve this as a pilot project. They have a system or a process for fast tracking programs that allows us to start a program under a pilot phase. We have 2 years to run that program in a pilot phase, at which time within that 2 years we actually have to go back and go through the full approval process, documentation, going through the commission. Mm-hmm. The approval of the pilot process through the commission actually just requires staff review, approval by the the academic affairs officers, and then the presidents, and not full vetting through the commission. We do that within 2 years. You don't have as trustees at this point a pilot process, but I would offer up the same solution. We'll be bringing the curriculum to you at your February study session for review, and then ask you to take some action at your business meeting in February. And if that action is in favor of the program, to say we agree to also pilot it, but within 2 years we want to have a full vetting of it and consider its feasibility, whether it actually fulfilled the expectations we had, otherwise take it off the books. We would certainly be open to that. If you would rather we just go through the full process with you and vet the curriculum and decide yes or no permanently, and then make your decision tonight contingent on our ability, your passing of that curriculum, again, we would be fine with that. It would allow us to keep moving on the timeline. But if for some reason you say, nope, we're not doing welding, really all we're out is some time working on the architectural or the design phase of the project. Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Kelty?
I was going to offer an amendment to this motion once someone made the motion, but in view of what Joe has just said, why don't we amend it right here and just say that we move to approve that planned addition to the Career and Technical Education Building, authorize the president or his designees to carry out all aspects of the project contingent upon approval of the programs that are to occupy that space.
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty would certainly be open to that and actually encourage that. The one thing I would ask you to do is focus on the welding component. We are not far enough along on the process technology design, nor are we actually completely sure we'll be able to accommodate it in that 2,000 square feet. So it really is the welding program initially that we're looking at.
So we can just say whatever program occupies that space.
Sure.
Okay.
And that should be flexible enough to cover anything we want to do.
I'll second his motion.
We need to have some more discussion, I believe, if we...
Well, we've got a second. We can discuss that now.
Yes, yes, we can discuss that now, but we also wanted to ask if any of the faculty or staff had any comments on this project. No? Okay, is there any more? Oh, yes, Kevin.
Sorry, I was reading over this, Madam Chair, and I haven't been part of the study sessions or anything yet. I know in the past that building has come up with discussions on modifications and stuff. Currently, it's not disability accessible. So once you modify this building, you're going to have to make that whole building accessible. So I just didn't know if that had been discussed as part of the plan, so that may affect.
Thank you.
That is, I'm talking as a disability.
Sure.
So, but that has come up, that there's some accessibility issues with that. But we're okay right now because of the date of when that building is built.
Mhm.
We modify it. We're going to have to modify the whole building.
That's a good comment.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, Kevin, thank you. That is a very good comment, and I believe the expansion will be accessible because the expansion is actually a freestanding structure that will be essentially aesthetically attached to the facility, but not a true expansion of the facility. The accessibility issues will have to be addressed with that component of it, not with the entire building. That said, and as Vice President Hay knows, we have some work to do around campus with accessibility, and we are going to be doing that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, in discussion, I have a question relative to the timing of presenting this proposal to the Community College Commission. Now, the Community College Commission is going to be meeting on February 6th. With the passage of this motion, will we then be prepared to make the presentation at that February 6th meeting?
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, that is our plan. They will be considering the facilities project of it. Your action now to say we approve the facility contingent on our approval of the curriculum, and then asking them for the facility, which would be contingent on the approval of the curriculum as a pilot phase, will allow us to move through the process. You will be going through the review and then the decision in February. They will be going through the review and then the decision on the pilot project in March. And I believe there's a lot of contingent upon, but I think we can manage that timeline, and that allows us to keep moving ahead with the construction timeline.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? I didn't think so. Okay. I would like to call for the question if there are no more questions of Dr. Schaefer. All those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Sorry, Ed. We're moving forward with this one. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask a belated question?
You may.
I was just wondering, as we move through this, and again, understanding the contingencies here, how do we handle personnel in the 2-year process? Because if you bring someone on, would we be considering them a temporary employee for that period of time until we move the program to permanent status, and then how would that be handled?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, it's a big conversation, and I owe you a handful of policies regarding program approval and all of that good stuff that we will try to build mechanisms in for pilots and grant-funded programs and things like that. I know that's a concern of yours. Because we would be asking the Commission's approval as a pilot for this, we know that it is not a formally adopted program in terms of being institutionalized into perpetuity, and therefore I imagine any type of relationship we would have with the faculty, we would disclose that this program has not been fully approved. If it's feasible and viable, we will go do that, and then we would move that process to more permanent appointment with the faculty. But until we have formalized and permanent approval for the program, I don't think we would be comfortable with engaging in a permanent employment relationship with a faculty member. So that may present some challenges with identifying the faculty, but my guess is people will see the viability of this program and be excited to be part of it, and so I think we can get that. But no, so if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Ed. Okay, we passed that B, and we're moving on to C, approval of the P-card resolution presented by Carol Hoagland.
Thank you, Madam Chair and trustees, and thank you for the opportunity to bring to you an enhancement to our purchasing process. We'd like to begin a pilot process for a P-card. And to be able to do that, we'll need a resolution for the bank approved by you tonight, if you agree to go forward with that. Our intent is to streamline our process and gain efficiencies, and we'll need to be doing some training. The purchasing office has developed a handbook and a card user agreement. The intent is not everybody on campus will have a credit card to go out and spend, but it will be limited to those that do large amounts of purchasing, and there'll be many restrictions on the cards, the same dollar limit as what's currently in place for LPOs and POs. So none of that will change. We'll also be able to control where the card is used by the merchant codes, and we believe that this will help enhance us being able to get the product here that we need, and it clearly will have a lot less paperwork that will be associated with it. And an example would be that we, instead of paying one vendor, a check to each vendor, then we would make one check to the credit card carrying, so it would be to the bank. They would pay all the vendors, so it would be much less paperwork that goes through the accounting office. I think that pretty much sums up, and you have the paperwork here on what we're trying to do. I would appreciate, and one other thing I'd like to add is that that we're working with the UMB Bank, who is also the partner with the state of Wyoming and the University of Wyoming. So we were able to piggyback on some of the arrangements that they have that are suitable for the institution as well. So with that, I'll open it up.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Ed.
I'll rush in here and get in trouble. Does this really take care of some of the issues that came up a couple of years ago regarding control over the use of cards? Will this, so to speak,
Alleviate
put that
some of
in our
that, yes.
background?
Yes, it'll alleviate some of that, yes. Now, currently, we are not opening up to a travel card. University of Wyoming uses their procurement card for purchasing and travel, and we're going to start a little slower than that and just use it for purchasing at this point. But if it goes well, then we can open it up to a travel card, and then that will help some of the issues that we have had in the past, yes.
Thank you.
I was basically going to ask what Ed did, but more specifically, I think one of the issues that we had at that time was quite a few service fees or late fees or things like that, and this will alleviate that issue?
Not specifically, no. What we'll be working with is a little smaller group, and there'll be specific deadlines that they'll have to meet to get the paperwork in so the payment can be made, and if there's violations of the card, we can pull the card online. So we have much tighter control over the use of the cards and the process that we need to make sure that we don't have these service fees.
Dr. Kilby?
I think I'd like to move, and I think I'm going to just read this motion because this one needs to be stated just so, that the board approves the adoption of a resolution authorizing, approving, and enrolling Laramie County Community College in the UMB P-Card program, and authorizing the college president or his designee to execute a formal agreement with UMB Bank and to implement the program under the direction of the Director of Contracting and Procurement.
I'll second.
And now, I would like to ask if the board has any more questions. And if not, I would like to ask if any of the faculty or staff have any questions? Or if there's a member of the public here? Questions? And if not, the motion has been made. If the board has no more questions, I would like to call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're moving right along. We're making progress tonight. Okay, approval of amendment number 2 to the president's contract. Basically, the contract states that we will allow Dr. Shaver and his family to stay in the house that LCCC owns for a period of no longer than 6 months. And because they are building a house and Dr. Joe thinks they'll be in sooner, it may happen sooner. And I do believe that we will be able to show the house while they still live there and have a good chance of selling it in a timely fashion.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
The original contract with you, Dr. Joe, was that a January 17, 2012?
It was a one-year contract.
Okay. I wonder if we have the wrong date here for the 6 months. If 6 months from January would be in July, I believe. So I think this should be July 17, rather than June.
I think June is 6 months, isn't it?
No,
Is it
6
July?
months from January to
Okay.
would be July.
Well, that's the amendment we'll make.
We don't want to
then.
kick you out too soon.
Yeah.
Living on the street.
Yep. Good catch, Don. Any other questions?
Well, he has to approve the change, because he made the motion.
I approve the change.
I do too.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any comments from anyone here? Staff, faculty, and public? We're moving right along. Okay, I will call for the question. All of those in favor of this extending Joe's contract in the House, please say aye.
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 I won't ask for nays because it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. He's going to be a neighbor anyway. I don't have this on here.
If you don't intend to, I move that we have no more business on the agenda. Well, we do have public comments.
Yes, we have. We'll move through that. You can all read number 8, and we'll move to number 9, public comments on anything not on the agenda. We were going to have a guest tonight, but we didn't. Yes, you may.
All right. First, as a representative of some student concerns, the issue on campus, they were asked to make it a tobacco-free campus all around together. I'm not sure that there was a lot of thought put in that process to begin with, because there was a lot of faculty and staff that actually smoke. So, to build a bridge over the highway so they have a smoking section, I think sounds kind of ridiculous. But I do notice that we do have a requirement of 30 feet from the doors for anyone who's outside smoking. And we started off great in the beginning of the first semester. Ashtrays and everything were out. But as winter months come, they gradually get closer and closer, and then they're standing outside the doors. So I don't know if we could do something with enforcement, or, maybe I can even get a group of students together with some paint and just make a 30-foot arch from the doors, smoke-free area. It could be a nice little bonding thing for the students. I don't know. It was asked of me, so I'm bringing it to the attention of all of you and see what kind of input I can take back to them.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Michael, we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Fair enough. Second one was there's still a request for some type of transportation for students that don't drive, don't care to drive between here and Laramie. I don't know, Dr. Kilty, if you know of anyone that I could be in contact with. It was brought to our meeting on Tuesday. Some type of transportation back and forth. It needs more research, for one, and I brought that to the attention of the person who brought it to us. But if you have any information, I'd be more than happy after the meeting to get a name or something.
I'm just going to ask you, how many students are involved here? How many people are involved?
There's one person that is determined, and my question was the same to her. How many students do we have here at LCCC and at UW that would take advantage of this service? And then secondly, if there's not a huge demand, why couldn't it be taken care of on the private side, like through the shuttle services? And TI Shuttle actually does shuttle back and forth, but apparently the cost is rather high. I don't know. I didn't check into it personally myself. It was just yesterday that it was brought to my attention.
The one thing I might mention is there are a lot of people who live in Cheyenne and teach on the University of Wyoming campus, and so there are a number of carpools. The problem is finding out who's involved in those carpools to make contact with them. So let me look around a little bit first.
Okay.
And when I went to the University of Wyoming, I carpooled, and the way I found out how to be a carpool person was there were notes on the board, like down in the student area.
Exactly.
But these days, they probably want to do that on the internet or both. And so I think Dr. Kelty's right. That would be the best means.
That was one thing that I was going to bring up to our PR department is, mention it on our Facebook. We don't have that many likes on our Facebook page, so find us and like us. But it's the communications, and I think that's with both of these. As I represent the student body and their claims, that I think communication is the key. Not only students but also faculty and staff on both. But I would agree. So
Communication is the key to life,
yes,
in my book.
Very much so.
Thank you, Michael. Ed?
Before Michael leaves, I was wondering, and again, sometimes the other side of the hill might be beneficial, maybe ASG at UW, if there was a little contact made with them, because I think at times they have facilitated that process for their students. So, maybe a little contact there might enhance that process.
Okay. And now I will take my student representative hat off and throw on just the personal side. With House Bill 105, as a hunter education instructor, that is really in the state of Wyoming. All you need to go through that and a background check through the Sheriff's Department, and you can get a concealed carry permit. It is very easy to get a concealed carry permit. Not that I pass everybody who comes through my hunter ed classes, but it is pretty simple. One thing that I don't know if it's been brought up in discussions or not, but I think that if it's kind of rash because of all the shootings lately that's been going on, that this is trying to get pushed through on the state level all over the country before something happens in Washington. If it would happen to pass, I would like to see something added in there where if it's okay in Wyoming for this to happen, that they need to not only follow through on get their carry concealed permit, but to have a actual psychological evaluation added to that bill. Any red flags that come up, then it would be on a professional level, and it could be part of the actual concealed carry permit process. Makes it a whole different issue, being two separate things. Myself, I'm okay with it, but I also know what I'm capable of with the firearms that I own. So there's yays and nays. So I'll leave that one at that. And I was gonna touch on remedial, but I think it needs to be not so much on let down on us. Why would colleges and community colleges have to flip the bill for what I don't think is actually taking place in the high school level? And that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if there's no further business, I move that we adjourn this meeting, take a brief recess, reconvene to an executive session for a couple of brief personnel questions.
Thank you. We will adjourn our business meeting. A second.
I'll second.
Ed. And we will reconvene in about 5 minutes. Thank you. And thank you for everyone who came this evening. Thank you. Thank you.